Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this DZone Fireside Chat on cloud security ROI. We're going to be talking about measuring the impact of your security investment, sponsored by Orca Security. I'm Jesse, Chief Technologist here at DZone, and I'm thrilled to be moderating this discussion with some esteemed experts in the field of security. First off, Andy Ellis, Advisory CISO at Orca Security. Say hey, Andy.
Hey, Jesse, how are you doing today?
Awesome, man. Thanks for being with us. And Roderick Chambers, back on the security front, Senior Information Security Specialist over at Recorded Future. Say hey, Roderick.
Hey there, how you doing?
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for being here. Together, we're going to explore the challenges, benefits, and best practices for measuring the success of your cloud security programs. Now, if you like our discussion today and you want to see more events like this one, just head on over to dzone.com/events, and you can see all of our on-demand content. With that out of the way, let's get started, gentlemen. I want to really just kind of tear back the facade of the news and everything and understand really what's happening in the world of cloud security, right? Emerging challenges, things that are new. The world's different than it was 10 years ago with regards to security. So would love to hear your view on that. Andy, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So we actually just went and looked through a lot of the cloud security setups for our customers and said, like, what are the common problems people are seeing? And just to level set, when we're talking cloud today, we're talking about being in the public cloud, AWS, Amazon, Azure, Ali Cloud, et cetera. And what we really found is some stuff that isn't very new. Like, number one most common thing we see that's very severe is unpatched and exposed web services. So we're still seeing, a sizable fraction of organizations have a foot in the door that adversaries can just get. Then, we see Git repositories. For those of you not familiar with Git, it's a place to store your source code. Yep. And often we're seeing sensitive information like API keys or other credentials that are being stored in publicly facing Git repositories that then give access into cloud infrastructures. Then we see, similarly, we just see AWS keys that are stored insecurely. People are still very used to just putting things on disk and leaving them there, which enables lateral movement. So all the things that we've sort of seen in the past are still here. We see overprivileged identity and access management roles. I don't know if you've tried to configure AWS roles recently. I actually just tried to do it myself. And oh my God, I am not qualified to do that. And I did not think there were security jobs that I would be like, I felt like Macaulay Culkin with, aftershave on.
Dude, it's real. And look, my son is in DevOps. I've talked about him before, just new in that field. And the whole storing passwords in files and Git, like you were saying, it's crazy. That was a thing 20 years ago where we're like, don't store your passwords, except in somewhere where they're secure, and it's still happening. So lots of good insights there. Roderick, you seeing the same kind of things?
Yep, absolutely. From a security standpoint, cloud environments is the one thing is protection of the cloud. So you want to hide your assets from attackers. At the same time, you can't find your assets if you are the customer. So it's very complex. You win one war and you win one battle and you lose the other battle on that part. Then it's definitely the mix, like almost like a heterogeneity of assets. So you have a mix like virtual machines and serverless areas, and that mix makes it very complex to kind of bucket those all the time. And then lastly, for the cloud, from a security and a risk perspective, is looking at all the different cloud vendors and understanding the configuration management. A lot of times configuration, how easy is it to configure your cloud environment? How easy is it to run your logs and audits? From a security standpoint, one of the things we look at is the next great hack. When can hackers really hack the cloud? And it's digital forensics, removing those steps that hackers take in order to exploit a vulnerability or find an asset. They can go in and try to erase those. So threat actors are very, very talented. It makes it difficult to track at the same time while building in that efficiency and security with cloud environments.
Yeah, and I think Roderick's on a great point about building in the efficiency and security. And I think too many security teams are actually too late to the game. I think if you look at how enterprise deployments used to work, security was never the first call that engineering made. Right? We often got called by the network team or the IT organization because it took like 9 months to deploy something new. And if we found out about it 5 months in, that gave us 4 months to get in and give advice and do minimal changes. We were never satisfied with what we got.
Right.
Well, cloud now means that somebody can just go in, they click a couple buttons, and they're live. And now you're playing catch up, and we haven't gotten out in front and provided the useful toolkits to say, here is how to do it safely. And let's be honest, like a lot of these clouds have configuration options that will let you do things safely, but very few people know how to use those.
And it's hard because from an operational standpoint, you want to move faster in the market. You want to get your software out. And it's a risk analysis, right?
Yep.
If you're in the business seat, it's what do you spend time on? This whole shift left, moving things over and making sure we think about security in the beginning, that slows things down. And so people skip it to their own detriment oftentimes. Yes. So, and Roderick, you were on one of the previous security talks. We talked about how, how do you get those security measures and move those things forward, or provide platforms or software or tools to help organizations as they move towards these distributed multi-cloud hybrid environments we talked about, strike that right balance between time to market and risk, right? That's an important thing. So what do y'all think? What are 2 or 3 things that you can think of to tell those business leaders, or to arm the security guys and gals watching this, to tell those business leaders to help strike that balance?
Well, I think you're really right on the time to market versus risk, which is before you go talk to somebody, you should figure out what their market risk looks like. Because if you have somebody who's in a startup that they have runway for the next like 12 months and they're trying to raise their next round, and you're talking about existential risk that's 5 years in the future, you are not speaking the same language.
Right.
Right. So you have to talk about, how does this risk affect time to market and affect market success? Because if you can't have that conversation, everything feels theoretical.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And then also building in policies as well too. I know people say security, especially like with a startup. If you have a startup with about 100 people or less, you can't go out there and afford a 14 or 15 person security team. So what I look at is through change management. With cloud environments, as you spin one cloud environment up, as you're trying to get a product ready to go for market, you're going to deprecate that services. What usually happens with change management is that we're so quick to want to develop the product that we forget to truly deprecate the other product and get rid of it and all the remnants of it, and we leave it out there. And of course, time has passed by and your product does very well, and you just continuously forget about it. Those back doors, those API keys and the tokens, signatures that are still out there that are available. So if security teams, especially with startups, 100 people or less, and you only have like a runway, like you said, of about maybe 12 months, that change management policy will help you at least have a log of what we spun up, what VMs, what technologies, what possible applications were we trying to play around with, and properly get rid of those. At least you have the ability to manage those.
And you can make great friends with the business there, because those are things that cost money.
Right.
Like we actually went looking through and we're like, oh, look across our customers, and our average customer, we could help them save, $100,000 in just going through and pulling down things that were no longer used, that were also security risks. But like if we said, oh, minor possible security risks because you've abandoned this S3 bucket, like nobody's going to really freak out about it. But when you're like, oh, if you clear up these 100 S3 buckets at a couple dollars a month each, like that starts to be real money.
Yeah, it's significant when you're dealing with AWS, Google platform, Azure, whatever it is. Sometimes it looks like small little changes, but those things add up because it's a constant cost every day, every hour, whatever. The little thing turns into a big thing real quick. I do want to switch gears really for just a second, if we can. I want to talk about AI. And listen, I've done the AI thing. I know it's not real AI yet. It's more machine learning, but we're going to call it AI. Don't call me out on that, Roderick. But as we talk about AI, these things are getting really mature, right? My son, I told you he's in DevOps. He actually had ChatGPT pretend to be 3 different expert coders to look at a piece of code and debate the merits and differences. So he had it arguing with itself yesterday. And I was shocked. I was like, did it work? He said, yeah. I was like, wow. So these things, these models, they're able to, code, they're able to find vulnerabilities if people are smart. So not only how can we use these to benefit our security programs, but they might be used against us too. So I want to get into that, with the rise of this AI, machine learning and stuff. How is that affecting cloud security in general? Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, so we're actually using AI in a limited fashion, and it's the LLM version of AI. So the large language models. And what we did is we looked at it and said one of the biggest challenges of security tools is how inscrutable they are. right? You find a problem and you want to tell people how to fix it. And let's be honest, developers are not the best people at writing instructions. And so, especially if it's not, if, they're trying to write in a language that's not their first language, and it just creates this little barrier. And we said, what if we use ChatGPT to do that? We said, look, here's sort of the template of instructions, but make this look pretty.
Huh.
And it's perfect. Like ChatGPT is an amazing copywriter.
Sure.
And so we have it do it. Then we have somebody QA it and say, yeah, does this really make sense? Because AI hallucination is a real problem. I'm not sure if you saw another company I'm familiar with, Vulcan, just put out this AI hallucinations report of, if you just ask the AI for like remediation instructions, it will make up package names.
It makes stuff up. Yeah.
And somebody could go squat on those, like, oh my God. So you got to be careful that you're actually getting good content out. But ChatGPT is a great writer. It's just not an imaginative one, let's say.
Great. Yeah, I agree. Roderick, what about you? What are you seeing on your side?
Definitely, this is, from AI, you're going to have a couple of business units that are going to be involved from the legal standpoint and ethics parts of that. Legally, these are all language models. They're learning on top of each other. And just like we want to use it to help us discover vulnerabilities, threat actors will use the same thing as well, discover vulnerabilities. That's where the ethics piece comes into that. When you're writing these language models, they have to learn from somewhere. And so a little bit about like our data centers, people, security vendor questionnaires, and I know everybody in the security business has to do a security vendor questionnaire, and always ask, where do you store our data? And if it's not in the location that we have, we're going to deny it. Well, same thing with AI. If you type in proprietary code in there to help it fix, which what we want to do, we want to make our daily lives easier, make it more efficient, do things like coding. Where is that data being stored? Is that code being used in another question that maybe somebody around the world, on the other side of the world, has asked before? That's where the legal and ethics piece comes in. Sometimes these are the first types of policies that people have ever written before AI, and it's always changing. Do you let the AI write your legal policy? We could actually do that, to make it happen. That might do it for you, but
it might be more readable.
And more reasonable too. But getting the human behind it does make a big difference. And those are things I think we're going to have to look at in the future. And also demystifying AI as well. In the last probably 8 months, we just heard AI, ChatGPT, Bard, Simplicity, so many different AI models that are popping out there. But we've always been surrounded by AI. Everything's been learning around us, from the little voices, the little device in your phone. Don't want to say the names, it'll all go off in my house. They're learning, they're listening to you, they're adapting to your voice, your biometrics that we have in our devices. So AI it's always been around us. It's just demystifying it now and seeing how powerful it's becoming.
And people can see that. The real question, and I'll ask this to you guys as well, where do you think in the process we shouldn't use AI? And that human oversight or human interaction, you think it's a bad idea to make that go away?
I think that's the ethics piece. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's the ethics thing, and I think Roderick's is really on point with that. But it's actually more around, do you have confidence in your process? Because I talk to a lot of CISOs and I say things like, how do you feel about automation? And they're all like, oh God, no. Like instantly, it's like you don't even get the question done. And every CISO, oh God, no. And I always say, well, why? And when you tease out the answer, it's because we don't actually trust our process.
Right.
And so I think putting AI over a process that you don't trust is just going to give you a process that you really don't trust, that you'll blame on the AI. And it's not the AI's problem, it's your process's fault. So fix your processes so that you can get to a point where you would trust automation, whether it's AI, whether it's a human not paying attention to the buttons they're clicking, or whatever it's going to be. But I think that's a place where you want to have humans really looking and understanding your process and your goals, and thinking holistically about, are we actually achieving what we want to achieve? And not, we handed this to an AI and we gave it a couple of rudimentary metrics, right? That's the biggest challenge, is you have to tell an AI what you want, and it will optimize ridiculously for that. One of my favorite white papers I've ever read is the one on the list of AIs cheating when being given computer games to play, and the cheats were things like they accidentally discovered how to crash the opponent's client, which meant they won by default. And it's like, oh, they weren't looking for a vulnerability, they were just looking for a win.
Right. Yep. Roderick, you were going to say something.
AI is definitely going to do exactly what you tell it to do. It's the trust but verify. That's the way I look at it. I mean, if you look at anything, if you had like a Grammarly, for example, it'll love to change your words around, but is that really what you wanted it to say when you use Grammarly? And that's the same way that we look at AI when we build an automation and it's running your systems and processes. It's going to help you. It's a helper. It's going to give you the overview, the summary, and it may be right, 9 out of 10 times, but I'm worried about that 1 out of 10 time that it's wrong. And it
Right.
defeats business operations, or it causes a crash in financial structure, different applications. So we got to understand that the human behind it, trust it and use it, but verify that it's correct. And then of course, subsequently make the changes in our processes. One thing with using AI, people look at is if you do if you ask about a company structure, is my company GDPR compliant? And it's going to go and scour the web and bring it all in there. But the point of going back in and then fixing those things that probably are wrong or outdated, making the language model correct, that's the part about verifying it for you. And of course, it tells you that you had remnants out there, that the AI did exactly what it did. It went out there and found it. Well, maybe that document came from 2011 when you first started off, or still out there. Those are great from a security and risk point of view. There's something that's out there in the internet that's feeding into the AI that you may not want anymore, that may be old and stale and needs change. So we got to learn how to use that as a powerful tool to clean up your entire just reputation, your attack surface, your assets, your processes. Use it as that helper to verify it.
That's awesome. I love that. And we're going to get into measurements here in a second. I love the idea, though, that I'm pulling from both of you, is that AI is good to help with some things, but it doesn't think. And
Right.
Andy's like, you want thinking through process. You want them doubting what they
Right,
read on the
critical
internet and
thinking.
verifying. Yeah, it doesn't do that. I love that. That's a key takeaway, I think, for those of you out here watching, is make sure that your humans are doing the thinking for you. We're going to shift gears now. I want to talk about this whole single platform approach. And we've already talked a little bit about reducing complexity. I think we got into process and things you can trust. But when we talk about adopting like a single platform approach to security, right? All this, single throat to choke, however you want to sell it, to streamline these workflows and, get your cost and your overhead in line. Like, what are some of the benefits from doing that? Like, why do I, sitting out there, and listen, I understand it's complicated, but if I'm just using AWS and I don't have multi-cloud, right? Yep. Using single cloud, why isn't AWS good enough? Like, Roderick, why would I need one of these platforms to help me kind of see what's going on?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be the efficiency and then cleaning up that cloud environment. One thing we had before, we talked about attack surface management or intelligence, and it's looking at all those assets that are out there, those you can passively collect, those assets you know about. Well, just like we said before, what Andy said, it's costly if you have remnants or assets out there that are continuously getting spun up. You clean that up, you save money. So efficiency in your cost structure as well. And of course, from a security point of view, it's logging. It's understanding where all your assets are at, what are they all plugged into, and do we still need them? Those are the things that we got to look at from a technology point of view, is efficiency with your assets. Can we move up to a different, maybe if you're only using AWS, maybe you need to diversify. Maybe use a Google environment or Azure environment for cloud for certain operations. A lot of people use Linux still as well. I mean, that's part of most back-end of the applications. Maybe there needs to be a dedicated platform to protect intellectual property based on the assets that are out there. So you inherently build in security by using the different platforms to review your attack surface. So money-wise, it always works out. And then asset security-wise, logging and then monitoring where all your application assets are at.
Awesome. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think you have to look at what are the sort of incentives, right? You look at AWS, and let's just say that you were only in AWS. And you're like, well, I could go use AWS Guard Duty, and I could use, and you can start listing 17-point solutions that AWS has rolled out, each of which solves a different problem. But none of them give you a holistic view to say, how do these problems interact? Like, what is the attack path an adversary might follow? Right? Can I look in and see that, oh, I have a vulnerable machine that has on it an identity, which on another machine gives it the access to be an admin, and that machine has administrator access into my whole AWS environment, or it has access to my data store. It's that context that's what really matters. So when people talk about single pane of glass, like, yes, that's helpful not to have to context switch. But what makes a single pane of glass actually work is when it contextualizes data from having significant coverage. so that you're not trying to look in narrow, silos and say what's wrong in each silo. You're looking at your entire organization. You're saying, what are my specific hot items? I got to go fix these. And then what are my trends?
Yeah.
Like, oh, looks like I have an identity and entitlements management problem in general. So what are the things that I can do? And so that's the benefit that the single platform gives you, is it lets you come into one place and look at all of the different things you might fix. It's not like you have, oh, I've got something to solve identity and entitlements management. And of course, it's going to tell me that's my biggest problem. And something else to look at data security posture. And that will tell me that's my biggest problem. One platform isn't trying to tell you like all of them are your biggest problem. It actually wants to direct you to the thing that it sees. Now, obviously, you want to trust that that's somebody who's making reasonable decisions for you and is transparent in how they're doing that.
And you've not done a shameless plug, but I will for Orca. I watched the demo yesterday in the attack path scoring and analysis where you see it visually and can dig into it. That's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I love that. It was amazing when we put that out, and it has a nice little step-by-step narrative. So it's like, here's just the sentences of how an adversary is going to do this. So you can almost copy and paste that into your narrative for explaining it up to your management. But that context is what's so valuable. Yeah. Because you don't want to go to somebody and waste all your energy saying, oh, you've got to patch this, got to patch this. And they're like, it's an end-of-life machine for a marketing campaign we did 5 years ago. We should have just turned it off, but you were telling me to patch it.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, there's some other machine that, oh, yeah, you should have patched that one because it has access to the customer database. Like, know what context is there.
Yeah, that was super slick. And Roderick, on your side, I'm thinking through, we've got this, and you laughed when he said single pane of glass. That just shows your age and my age. I mean, when we're using terms like that, but yeah, I mean, you were there in the day when that was invented, right? When we were talking about, I just want a single pane of glass to see what does it matters what's on the glass, right? Yep. It's got to be useful. It's got to be, analyzing. But as we get to the CNAPPs, right, these cloud native application protection platforms, what are some of the things from your perspective, Roderick, that our viewers should be looking for when they're trying to figure out if they're going to use one of these things and which one of them they want to use?
Oh, that's perfect. I mean, that single pane of glass is the quest that's been going on for millennial. I think it has been found, but I would definitely echo Andy's response to discovery path. That's huge. Understanding the discovery path of an asset and then giving you the sourcing of where that came from. Did it come from a Google report? Did it come from a K1 report? Was it a CDN? That discovery path is important. That tells your attacker what's going on, how attacker may attack you, and also tells you how to remediate. The next thing is prioritization, exploitation intelligence. Just like Andy said, I look at it from a point of view of threat intelligence. What threat actors care about this asset? Has it been exploited in the last 30, 60, 90 days? And if this threat actor exploits it, are they just going to change the font on my web page? Or are they actually going to crack in and get into payrolls? Yeah, that's going to help prioritize that. So the exploitation intelligence of threat actors, steps for remediation, the last times it's been exploited, and then what was the impact of the exploitation, and that prioritization. And of course, taking every one of those vulnerabilities and misconfigurations, they rank. We have the standard, low to critical or 1 to 4. 40. You give your scale, you have it. but it makes it efficient is that having that scale of being able to prioritize. Like, these 12 patches will improve our environment, 2 times over. We should, of course, you want to prioritize because we always say, well, just patch it, patch Tuesday. Until you understand the work that goes behind putting in a patch, I don't think you really ever know how hard that is. I wish it was as simple as just updating and letting your computer sit there for an hour, but it's not. You might have to rebuild scripts and add other coding, run it through the sand. A lot goes into patch management. So having that prioritization really does helps out across the board.
Awesome. And there's a lot of you out there, I know, watching this, laughing along with us at some of the stuff. But we've got, 5 or 6 minutes left. I do want to hit like on the businessy side. So Andy, I'm going to turn to you for this one, right? Being a security leader in a company, it's challenging, right? You're always going to be justifying costs and benefits and risk analysis and all that stuff. But for the guys and gals out there watching this, right, who need to justify those budgets to their executives, what are some of the strategies that you used or you find effective in trying to convey the importance of investing in the cloud security infrastructure?
Yeah. So first, most important thing is understand the people you're talking to. Like, do they want to see ROI measured in dollars? Great. Like, I personally think it's hard to measure ROI in dollars, but if that's what they want, give it to them. And you can do it. There are ways to do this. So we actually just did a report with Tag Cyber where they looked at the ROI of Orca against other styles of platforms. And what you really do is you break it down into multiple categories. And one of the reasons you want to do this is so if somebody argues with a category, you can be like, okay, fine, we'll just ignore that. Right? So you say, okay, well, let me just compare, like, let me do this against competitive solutions. Like what's my straight cost difference?
Right.
But then what's my human cost difference? Like, is this something that's a easy 15-minute integration that's no agents, where I don't have to worry about rebuilding scripts in 85 places, versus something where I'm going to not be able to deploy it on 20% of my systems because it will just fail, and where I'll have escalations and trouble tickets. You've got to count that human cost of ownership just to get deployment. And then you have to look at, like, what would my breach costs be? And look, I'm a firm believer that you should always round down. Like, it is easy to overinflate those numbers, and there's a lot of numbers out there. And so take some very conservative numbers and just say, hey, like, what is the risk of exploitation? And you pull it out of industry reports. Don't make it up on your own. Because everybody's going to want to say, oh my God, that's like this big number. You're saying that we'll save, an annualized $300,000 a year if we deploy this. Well, they're going to want to see like some cost reduction, or they want to see that they've spent that money in the past. That's always the hard part. It's like buying insurance, which is a lose-lose. Like, don't sell this as insurance, because nobody likes insurance, because either nothing happens to you and you're out the money for insurance, or something happens to you and, well, something happened to you. So instead, think of this as preventative care. We're trying to make sure that we don't have to go in for a root canal. And like, everybody knows what the cost of a root canal is. But if you downplay it, then if they're going to disagree with you, they have to upplay it.
Gotcha.
So if you're like, oh yeah, we could get breached, it wouldn't be that bad, temporary stock dip for 6 months, but every company's recovered from that. Like, your executives are more likely to freak out at that point than if you say, oh my God, our stock will take this massive hit if we get breached. They're gonna be like, oh, come on, it's not that big of a deal. So be gentle, downplay the numbers, don't over sell it. But at the same time, like, be realistic. Like, what's it going to cost to do this? How critical are these assets? Look, if cloud is not important to you at all, don't worry about cloud security. But probably cloud is where you're going to be making your money if you're not already making it there. It's probably your most important environment.
Awesome. All right, Roderick, what you got?
Definitely. We can always hit on all the quantitative metrics, your mean time to patch, the configuration speed. You have all those that are in place. But another big piece is going to be that qualitative aspect as well. Compliance. If you have a compliance aspect of it, that is your moneymaker right there. Are you bound by some type of compliance report on your assets, where they're located? Are you bound by geographic regions? Can you not have assets in a GDPR regulated country? That saves money clearly right there. Going through your vendor and your employee satisfaction results as well too. Yes, we all like to want to see efficiency, but if you make your engineers and developers angry, you're going to have issues. So employing a good solution that you can clean up their environment, they can make their work more efficient, that's worth gold as well too. So those qualitative pieces as well as also the end user as well, with some of our end users. If they're getting a faster time for their platform, getting assets, or being able to link up to servers or transmit data quicker and faster, more efficient, secure, that's all valuable as well. We always focus on those quantitative metrics, the timing, how fast can we patch and fix configurations and prioritization, those other soft skills, especially compliance. If you're bound by compliance, you just have to have one to track your attack surface. So you're in the business. That's already a metric right there. Now, how easy can we get to compliance? That's the next goal. But some of those that goes into that when you're selecting and looking at different providers.
Awesome. All right. Last question. Take a minute or so, each of y'all. I want you to think about the companies out there that are trying to improve their security programs. We just gave them some great insight into how to get investment, and, Andy on how to sell it, and Roderick to throw in, make sure it's something they actually have to have. This is great. But what are some of the things that you've encountered as mistakes? And you can illustrate with a fun story, right? I'm sure everybody has really gnarly security stories, but some common mistake or some pitfall that you've seen that you want them to avoid, right? Think about this as passing on some wisdom to the next generation in security. and take a second. Andy, if you'd like to go first, just lay it on us, man. What do you want to leave our viewers with?
Oh man, the number of times that I have built a security system myself when I could have just bought something that did it. And sometimes I was like, I was right. And it's like, yep, I could build something that was better than what was out there for you, tailored for my needs. But at the end of the day, my time to market on internally was so much longer.
Mm.
And this isn't saying you should just buy everything, because there are some things that are free that are out there. It's like, yeah, go grab the free thing and try it out and see if it will work for you. But really understand the value of your time and of the wall clock time of how long it takes to get something done. Like if you've got a vendor that's like, hey, I'll give you a free trial and it's a 15-minute integration, why would you not do that versus try to cobble something together yourself out of 75 different open source tools?
Smart. Build versus buy. Good call. All right, Roderick.
Along those same lines of build versus buy, I would say this: have a plan for when you use and buy those products to look at those cloud assets, and then implement the remediations. A lot of people have the vulnerability scanners, multiple ones, but they never take the time to fix it. So create a plan for that. One of the biggest things that I've seen is, we have, your Tenables, your Rapid7, you have all these different vulnerability scanners out there, agent and agentless ones that are out there, and we get the results back, but you just never fix them. And I've seen some clients that have that report on top of report on top of report until they get a pen test and they have to clean it up. So those are the big things. And definitely don't try to build it yourself. That just wastes time when you can actually go out there and do those vulnerabilities. But implementing the plan, having a plan for remediation, and then actually using the scanners and stuff that are available to you. You'd be surprised when you read all the different subscription service levels of how much access and capabilities your scanners currently have right now. So I'll also go back and check that as well.
Awesome. Guys, this was great. Thanks for taking the time. A lot of good insights out there for you all watching. Great discussion today, exploring the significance, how to measure the ROI, when to let your people do the thinking versus ChatGPT, all around how to improve your cloud security environments. Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you. Thanks to Orca for sponsoring this. Again, I saw the demo. I thought it was awesome. Some really cool stuff in there, especially checking the news. Anyway, people can go check that out on your website. And also to you, Roderick, thanks for coming back, buddy. It's always a good time talking about security and hearing some of the stories. But thanks y'all for the chat. As organizations out there, as you continue to embrace cloud technologies, it's clear that there's a lot of stuff that we've got to juggle, whether it's build versus buy and making sure that we follow up with the suggestions for the tools that we buy and the scanners that we use. And we hope that this fireside chat has provided valuable insights and actionable takeaways for y'all. Now, if you like this discussion and want to see more events like this, just go to dzone.com/events and see all of our on-demand content. If you would, just like any security environment, we want to be constantly improving. So if you can stay for just one more minute and fill out a quick survey, we'd really like to hear from you on how we can do better. Thanks everyone again for joining us. Bye.